My name is Tawnya Jones, and I'm the Career and Credential Consultant in the Southeast region.
And my name is Ron Klonowski, and I am the Business Relations Specialist in the East Central region. We plan for accessibility from the start. For example, we use the accessibility checker that is built into Microsoft 365 to review the resource guide in PowerPoint. We address color contrast, font style and size, and add alternative text known as alt text to visual images. Also, in our delivery, we mention each other by name as the conversation goes back and forth. This is to indicate who is speaking. This can be helpful when attendees are receiving this information through services like American Sign Language interpretation and live captioning. After the webinar, we edit the transcript and fix any captioning errors before uploading the webinar to our on-demand library. We also include a reasonable accommodation statement in our invitation to the webinar so that if attendees need an accommodation, they know who to contact to ask. Taking these steps up front can make this presentation more accessible and inclusive for everyone. Now let's give an overview of today's webinar.
Welcome to the second session in our Disability Inclusive Workplaces series. In our last session, we focused on inclusive leadership, how leaders at all levels can set the tone for a workplace culture that values and supports employees with disabilities. Today, we're focusing on attracting a diverse talent, specifically how to incorporate inclusive hiring practices that welcome applicants, including candidates with disabilities. We'll be having a discussion around these three key areas that can help you and your organization take meaningful steps forward to integrate skills-based hiring practices into your recruitment process, develop targeted recruitment strategies tailored to specific roles, and identify supports and partnerships that enhance inclusive hiring practices. We'll also be joined by three special guests who will share real-world examples of how they've successfully put these strategies into practice and attracted candidates with disabilities in their own organization. So let's stop and ask our audience a question. A poll will appear on your screen. What's the biggest challenge your organization faces when trying to attract qualified candidates with disabilities? 1, difficulty connecting with disability-focused talent pipelines or networks. 2, unintentional barriers in job postings and the application process. 3, lack of staff training on inclusive recruitment and accommodations. And 4, unfamiliar with or resistance to skills-based hiring practices. So let's wait for the poll to come through, get some answers here. And it looks like number 2, unintentional barriers in job postings and the application process is about 29%, and difficulty connecting with disability-focused talent pipelines or networks. So those are kind of our top 2 that we're looking at. So thank you to our audience for your responses. These are all important areas to address, and we'll cover each one today. So attracting qualified candidates with disabilities isn't just the right thing to do, it's a smart business strategy. When you actively include people with disabilities in your recruitment efforts, you open the door to a broader, often untapped talent pool of qualified candidates that can fit skill gaps and build more innovative teams. Higher employee retention, especially when inclusion is built into workplace culture. Greater innovation, as teams that include employees with disabilities bring new perspectives and problem-solving approaches. And a stronger employer brand, which appeals to customers, clients, and future employees alike.
And Tawnya, the data backs this up. According to research conducted by Deloitte, inclusive companies are 2 times more likely to meet or exceed financial targets and 6 times more likely to be innovative and agile. When you remove barriers to employment and focus on ability, you position your organization to attract and recruit skilled, motivated candidates with disabilities who are ready to contribute.
Thanks, Ron. All right, let's cover each of these best practices for attracting qualified candidates with disabilities. Starting with how your culture reflects inclusion. This starts with the messaging your organization sends every day. So here are some questions to consider. Does your website and marketing materials include images of people with disabilities? Is your language inclusive and welcoming? Are your hiring teams trained in disability etiquette or how to accommodate candidates with disabilities effectively? Do your values and mission statements reflect a commitment to accessibility and inclusion? These are not just surface level questions. They reflect the deeper culture of your organization, and job seekers are paying attention.
That's right, Tawnya. When inclusion is part of your culture, it naturally extends to your hiring practices. It shows up in how you write job descriptions and the job's essential functions, where and how you advertise open positions, how you communicate with candidates during early interactions, and how you support employees from the start. And here's why this matters. Candidates with disabilities, like all candidates, want to work for organizations where they feel seen, valued, and supported. If your culture doesn't reflect that, you may lose out on top talent before they even apply. Creating a culture of inclusion also helps reduce turnover and increase employee engagement. When people feel like they belong, they're more likely to stay, grow, and contribute at their highest level. Tawnya?
So once your culture reflects inclusion in your messaging, your values, and your people, the next step is to make sure your hiring practices align with that culture. Some examples of practices employers can implement are offering disability etiquette and awareness training for hiring managers, supervisors, and frontline staff. Another example is including people with disabilities in your internal communications, such as including a positive story about disability in your employee newsletter. And a third way is to review your mission and values to ensure they reflect a commitment to accessibility and inclusion. So let's hear your ideas. We're opening the chat for a moment. Please take a minute to respond to this question by dropping your comment into the chat. What's one way your organization demonstrates disability inclusion in its culture or hiring? Fortunately, I am having some technical issues getting to the chat at this point. Nothing is showing up.
Someone did respond accommodation statement on job postings, so that's a good way of doing it. These are coming in now, Tawnya.
Yep, I do see some now, Ron. Thank you. So utilize OOD apprenticeship programs, inclusive hiring practices, including statements about accessibility in our event announcements and invitations, sound cues for when people enter and exit the building, blind and low vision reading services, disability etiquette training. So thank you for sharing your thoughts. These insights can help us learn from one another and highlight the many disability inclusion can show up in the workplace. So let's move on to share a hiring practice that can make a huge difference in your efforts to attract candidates with disabilities. One of the most effective strategies for employers to consider is to shift from traditional hiring models to a more inclusive, skills-based approach. Ron, can you provide some insight?
Sure. Skills-based hiring is a forward-thinking and inclusive approach that prioritizes what a candidate can do rather than where they went to school or how many years they've worked. It shifts the focus from traditional credentials to capabilities, particularly in roles where skills and potential are stronger indicators of success, helping employers identify talent based on real-world competencies and potential. This approach is especially valuable when trying to build a more inclusive workforce because it removes barriers that often disproportionately affect people with disabilities.
That's right, Ron. Skills-based hiring is particularly impactful for candidates with disabilities who may have gaps in employment due to a medical condition or a disability. For example, a candidate who took time off for medical treatment may have a gap in their resume, but brings strong organizational and communication skills from previous roles. Non-traditional career paths such as freelance work, self-employment, or volunteer leadership. For example, someone who operated a home-based business may have developed budgeting, marketing, and project management skills. Transferable skills gained through lived experience, such as adaptive problem solving, resilience, and navigating complex systems. By focusing on skills, employers open doors to a broader talent pool. It encourages hiring managers to evaluate candidates based on a job-related qualifications, not assumptions about their background. It's a foundational practice for building a truly inclusive workplace, one that recognizes talent in all its forms.
Thanks, Tawnya. Here are a few strategies employers are using to shift towards skills-based hiring to attract a broader range of qualified candidates. Identify core competencies needed for success in the role rather than defaulting to years of experience or specific degrees. For example, a customer service role requires a focus on communication, empathy, and problem solving, not necessarily a college degree. Consider eliminating unnecessary degree requirements that are not essential to perform the job, opening the door to candidates with non-traditional backgrounds who have the right skills. For example, if a position requires effective writing skills, consider accepting writing samples over a bachelor's degree in English. Recognize transferable experience, including skills gained through volunteer work or caregiving or informal learning. For example, a parent may have developed scheduling and multitasking skills which are relevant to an administrative role. Use assessments to give candidates the opportunity to demonstrate their abilities in real-world scenarios. For example, ask candidates to complete a short task or project that measures the relevant skills and abilities needed to perform the job. These strategies help employers focus on what candidates can do, not just where they've been, and create a more inclusive and effective hiring process. When you adopt a skills-based approach, you're widening the net. Tawnya, can you talk a little bit about writing inclusive job descriptions?
Of course. So one of the most practical ways to implement skills-based hiring is by rethinking how job descriptions are written. Job descriptions are often the first barrier or opportunity for attracting qualified candidates with disabilities. Writing them inclusively starts with identifying the essential functions of the role and removing language or requirements that unintentionally exclude qualified candidates with disabilities. Let's discuss some best practices with examples to help you make your job postings more inclusive. Conduct a job analysis to determine the physical, cognitive, and environmental demands of the role to identify what tasks are truly essential. For example, instead of assuming a role requires standing all day, assess whether tasks can be completed while seated or with assistive devices. Clearly define the essential functions, what the person must be able to do with or without reasonable accommodation. Example, must be able to communicate effectively with team members and clients is more inclusive than must be able to speak clearly. Focus on outcomes, not physical tasks. For example, instead of must be able to lift 25 pounds, say this role involves maneuvering materials. Use plain, inclusive language and avoid jargon, technical terms, or unnecessary credential requirements. Include a clear, reasonable accommodation statement in every posting. This sends a strong message that your organization is inclusive and prepared to support their success. Here's an example. We are committed to providing an inclusive and accessible workplace. If you need an accommodation during the application process, please contact our HR department. This approach not only opens the door to a wider talent pool, it signals that your organization values accessibility and disability inclusion. So now that we've covered how to write inclusive job postings and ways to ensure your application process is accessible, the next step is to think about how you attract talent. Different roles often require different outreach strategies. Let's discuss practical, inclusive approaches for entry-level, internship and apprenticeship, and leadership roles. These strategies can help you connect with qualified candidates with disabilities at every level of your organization. And across all these levels, one of the most valuable resources available to Ohio employers is Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, or OOD. OOD can support you with sourcing candidates, identifying accommodations, and building inclusive hiring practices. Ron, will you share more with our audience about how OOD can help employers identify job candidates?
Sure. We'll start with entry-level roles. Partner with OOD. OOD can help you identify qualified candidates, provide job coaching, and support onboarding. Regarding internships, partner with OOD's career development specialists. They can help you as you design inclusive internship programs and connect you with college students and recent graduates with disabilities. OOD's webinar, Creating Inclusive College Internships, provides more details for employers looking to create inclusive internship programs. Collaborate with college disability and accessibility services offices. Build relationships with institutions to connect with students preparing to enter the workforce. Share success stories. Highlight past interns with disabilities who thrived in your organization. This builds trust and encourages others to apply. Tawnya, can you talk a little bit about leadership roles?
Sure. So a few things to consider include engage with OOD's Accessible Ohio specialists. They can provide resources to ensure your job descriptions, leadership development programs, mentorship structures, and advancement pathways are accessible. Offer mentorship and sponsorship. Pair emerging leaders with mentors who can support their growth and advocate for their advancement. Review promotion practices for equity. Make sure advancement criteria are transparent and inclusive, and that employees with disabilities have equal access to leadership opportunities. By tailoring your recruitment strategies to the role and ensuring they are inclusive, you expand your talent pool and build a workplace where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. And remember, OOD is here to support you every step of the way, from hiring to inclusive internship programs to accessibility of your programs and services.
So, Tawnya, inclusive hiring doesn't begin with the job application. It starts with how and where you share your opportunities. Inclusive outreach ensures your message reaches a wide audience, including people with disabilities, who are often an untapped source of qualified talent. Here are some strategies to help you connect with candidates more effectively. Share opportunities with campus career centers and disability services offices. These offices can help promote your roles to students in places where students are searching for job opportunities. Attend inclusive career fairs and disability-focused hiring events. Look for events that specifically welcome students with disabilities or focus on diversity hiring. Highlight accessibility in your postings. Include the job's essential functions and be clear about accommodations, flexible work arrangements, and inclusive policies. Remember to include a reasonable accommodation statement in your job postings. Partner with OOD. Our business relations team hosts hiring events throughout the year and sources qualified candidates with disabilities for your job openings. Our Accessible Ohio specialists can consult with you on ways to make your recruitment materials and careers webpage accessible and inclusive. We provide information on using disability inclusive language and accessibility best practices to help you attract and support a wider talent pool.
Ron, outreach also includes how your organization presents itself on your websites, social media, and in communication with potential candidates. Ensure your website and social media reflect your inclusive culture. Candidates often research employers before applying. Include a dedicated webpage that outlines your accessibility practices and includes your reasonable accommodation statement. Include testimonials from employees with disabilities. Real voices build credibility and show that your organization walks the talk. Feature short quotes or videos from employees on hiring websites and in newsletters. Feature partnerships with organizations like OOD. This signals that you've actively engaged in disability inclusion and prioritize accessibility. Use inclusive language and imagery. Avoid generic stock photos and corporate jargon. Use visuals and messaging that include people with visible and invisible disabilities. Every communication, from a job posting to a social media post, is an opportunity to reflect your organization's commitment to disability inclusion. That commitment can carry through to your job descriptions, application process, and workplace culture.
That's right, Tawnya. Making job postings accessible is essential for reaching a broader talent pool, including individuals with disabilities. Job postings are more than just mini job descriptions. They're your first opportunity to connect with potential candidates and showcase what makes your organization and the role unique. Today's job seekers are selective. They want postings that are clear, inclusive, and relevant to their skills and interests. A well-crafted, accessible job posting can significantly expand your applicant pool by removing barriers and making it easier for qualified candidates to see themselves in the role. Here are some best practices for accessible job postings. Use clear, inclusive language. Avoid jargon or overly technical terms. For example, instead of saying leverage cross-functional synergies, use collaborate with team members. Ensure screen reader compatibility. Use accessible formats like HTML or accessible PDFs. Avoid image-only job postings or scanned documents that screen readers can't read. Offer alternative formats. Provide job postings in large print or audio formats upon request. For online postings, use accessible fonts and sufficient color contrast to support applicants with visual, cognitive, or learning disabilities. Include a reasonable accommodation statement. Here's an example. We are committed to providing an inclusive application experience. If you need accommodations during the application process, please contact our HR department. Alternative application methods are available upon request. Use searchable, understandable job titles. For example, use customer support specialist instead of support staff to more clearly define the role and the responsibilities. This helps applicants understand the expectations. Tawnya, will you share the best practices about how an accessible application process can be just as inclusive?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So once your job postings are accessible and inclusive, the next step is to ensure your application process supports that same level of access. This includes your hiring website, application platform, and outreach methods. So here are some best practices to consider. Involve people with disabilities in developing, selecting, and testing your systems, and ask for feedback on usability and accessibility. This real-world input helps promote accessibility from the start and identify barriers that automated tools may miss in existing practices and systems. Ensure your website meets accessibility standards. Follow the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, and regularly assess for accessibility. Accessible hire specialists are available to consult with you about developing and maintaining the accessibility of your application process. Design for assistive technology compatibility. Make sure your systems work with screen readers, dictation software, and keyboard-only navigation. Offer alternative application methods. Permit applicants to apply via email, phone, or in person. Also, be prepared to provide materials in alternative formats such as large print, braille, or audio. Consider accommodations such as qualified reader or scribe when needed. So let's take a moment to discuss technology barriers in the hiring process. Technology can make hiring more efficient, but if it's not designed with accessibility in mind, it can unintentionally exclude qualified applicants, especially those with disabilities. Employers are encouraged to evaluate and adapt their hiring tools to ensure they are inclusive. So here are some common technology-related barriers. Inaccessible online applications. For example, hiring websites that aren't compatible with screen readers or designed for keyword navigation, making it difficult for applicants who are blind or have low vision to apply. Resume filters may unintentionally reject candidates with employment gaps or exclude individuals whose gaps are disability related. Inaccessible chatbots. If they don't work with assistive technology, applicants may be unable to access information or get help. Automated screening tools. These may misinterpret facial expressions or speech patterns, which can potentially disadvantage applicants. To remove these barriers, consider the following steps. Avoid unnecessary automation. Turn off tools that rely on facial expressions or speech patterns. Disable filters that automatically reject applicants based on employment gaps or other non-essential criteria. Permit applicants to opt out of automated screening and request alternative methods. Plan and purchase with accessibility in mind. Include accessibility requirements in your technology procurement policies and budget for accommodation and accessible tools. Evaluate and monitor regularly. Build accessibility checks into your ongoing processes and involve people with disabilities in continuous testing and feedback. Taking these steps opens the door to a wider talent pool and helps ensure that qualified individuals are not unintentionally excluded. Even small changes can make a big difference in creating a more inclusive hiring experience. So before we move on, let's take a moment to reflect on the great work your organization is already doing to create inclusive opportunities. You'll see a rating scale appear on your screen. We'd like to know from the audience on a scale of 1 to 5, how accessible are your organization's job positions and application process? With 1 being, we're just getting started, and 5 meaning, we are fully accessible and inclusive. Think about things like, can applicants easily request accommodations? Are job descriptions written in plain language? Is your application platform screen reader friendly?
Okay, we'll let those come in. All right. And it appears we are all over the map with people from selecting 1 all the way to 5. So thank you for sharing your responses. Wherever you land on this scale, this is a chance to recognize your efforts to identify opportunities to grow even further. Even small improvements can make a meaningful difference in attracting qualified candidates with disabilities. Tawnya, let's pause to answer a few questions from our audience. Please use the Q&A button at the top of your screen to ask us a question. While we are waiting for those questions to come in, let's address the pre-submitted questions we've received.
Our first pre-submitted question is, I recently lost a client with aphasia. After months of effort, he left my office out of frustration of not being able to articulate, write, speak, or understand what was being said to him. I'm interested and open to any suggestions to help find employment should I have another case like this. So OOD helps individuals with disabilities find resources, support, and opportunities that fit their unique needs, abilities, and interests so they can gain and retain meaningful employment and independence. Individuals with a disability interested in receiving OOD services can apply at www.oodworks.com. In your materials used to establish and work with clients, include a reasonable accommodation statement and be prepared to handle requests and collaborate with the individual to identify an effective solution. But this is always case by case. Be knowledgeable about types of accommodations that can assist with communication. Augmentative and alternative communications, also known as AAC device. Alternative formats, this is type, write, or use sign language. When working with an established client, if you observe or presume a communication barrier, ask the person how you can help or what the preferred type of communication is, and then communicate in that way if possible. So
I'm not seeing any more in the QA yet, so I think we have another pre-submitted question.
We do, Ron. So our next pre-submitted question was, I worked with OOD in the past. Is it still your policy to send a caseworker with the employee if needed until the employee is comfortable with their environment? So OOD supports employers with disabilities, businesses, and their supervisors through a variety of services, including on-the-job supports or job coaching. If needed, a job coach can work in partnership with employers to support the successful employment for individuals with disabilities with a variety of skills, experiences, and employment types. A job coach can also provide guidance and support to the employee to successfully adapt to the work environment. More information about job coaches can be found in OOD's Effective Partnerships with Job Coaches and Job Developers and Coaches in the Workplace webinars.
Okay, I'm not seeing any Q&A questions, but thank you for those pre-submitted ones. We'll stop for another Q&A break before the end of the training.
So now we're excited to shift from strategy to real-world application. We're joined by 3 guest panelists who bring firsthand experience in building disability-inclusive recruitment practices. Each of them has taken intentional steps to attract qualified candidates with disabilities, and we're looking forward to hearing how they've done it, what's worked, and what lessons they've learned along the way.
All right, so welcome to our panelists. We have with us Lexi Benavides, Regional Recruiter for Covelli Enterprises, which is a franchisee of Panera Bread and other restaurants. Lisa Gould, Executive Vice President of Business Administration and Interim Principal Executive Officer for the Hall of Fame Village. And we were supposed to have Laura Weichert with us today, but unfortunately something has come up. But to no avail, we have Dwayne Rohr filling in for her, and he is the Senior Manager of Workforce Initiatives for CVS Health. So thank you all for being here today. We're going to start with a few questions to get the conversation rolling, and then we'll move into more specific questions tailored to what each of you has done in your respective organizations. We'll wrap up this portion of the webinar with a Q&A, and if you have questions for our panelists, please use the Q&A button at the top of your screen. We'd love to hear from you and get your questions answered. So let's go ahead and begin by hearing from our guest panelists. So let's start with Lexi. Would you start by briefly introducing yourself and sharing your role in your organization's hiring or disability inclusion efforts?
Thank you, Ron. My name is Lexi. I'm a regional recruiter for Covelli Enterprises, who franchises restaurants, and a few others. And I cover the Northeast Ohio region. We do partner with OOD and other organizations for part of our disability inclusion.
Great, thank you, Lexi. Let's next move to Lisa.
Good morning, Ron. My name's Lisa Gould. I'm the Executive Vice President of Business Administration for the Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company, more commonly known as the Hall of Fame Village. And prior to my current role, I actually oversaw HR for 5 years here. And we've been partnering with OOD for, I'd say, probably 3 of those 5 years. So happy to be here this morning.
Great. Thanks for being a part of our presentation. And as I mentioned, we have Dwayne Rohr from CVS. Dwayne, would you like to share?
Thank you, Ron. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dwayne Rohr. I'm a Senior Manager for Workforce Initiatives here at CVS Health. I've been with the company 28 years, and with my team, I cover the state of Ohio, Florida, Kentucky, and Tennessee.
Great. Well, Dwayne, we'll start with you. What motivated CVS to prioritize inclusive hiring, and how has that shaped your approach to attracting candidates with disabilities?
Great question, Ron. So CVS has always aimed to build a workforce that mirrors the diversity of its customer base. This includes people with disabilities, who are often underrepresented in the workforce. Leadership recognized that hiring from this talent pool not only promotes equity, but also strengthens community ties. Also, by tapping into the disability community for filling in those critical labor gaps, we can find employees that are loyal, capable, and ready and excited to go to work. These employees are often bring unique perspectives, problem-solving skills, and high level of dedication, which all feeds back into that positive workplace culture and productivity that CVS Health strives for. Because of CVS's strong commitment to building an inclusive and diverse workforce, our company has invested by building an entire team that directly focuses on this work, our CVS Workforce Initiatives team. There's about 45 of us in this team that cover the whole United States. Our team focuses on building strong partnerships with local organizations to serve people with disabilities, provide pre-employment support, and to help break down those barriers to employment and help these individuals break that cycle of poverty by going to work.
Great. So, I mean, we know firsthand how active CBS has been. And likewise, we also know at the Hall of Fame Village how they've organized to prioritize inclusive hiring. So, Lisa, can you share a little bit about what's going on over at the Hall of Fame Village?
Sure. We operate a campus that invites guests to campus for events such as concerts, sporting events, games, etc. We want our staff to be reflective of the population of those that are visiting our campus, and therefore we assume that any guest with a disability would want to see those like them and our staff serving them.
Right. And next up is Lexi. Talk a little bit about how you're doing this over at Covelli.
Sure. So we focus on a sense of belonging, community, warmth, and growth. So our inclusive hiring helps us attract a wider talent pool with a broader range of skills and perspectives, improving employee engagement and retention. So we continue to partner with organizations such as OOD to help us with outreach to candidates with disabilities.
Great. And Lexi, can you share an example where focusing on skills-based hiring helped you identify a strong candidate that had a disability?
Sure. So for our job descriptions, we have them tailored to focus more on skills-based hiring. They have been simplified to focus on job requirements, day-to-day expectations and responsibilities, and what we provide to our employees. When we're doing interviews, we're more focused on the hard and soft skills, the candidate's ability to perform the job, and their willingness to learn versus previous experience.
Great. Thank you. Let's go next to Dwayne. Can you share a little bit about, an example where you maybe focusing on skills-based hiring did, lead to you getting a strong candidate that happened to have a disability?
Yeah, we do a lot of different things. Focusing on skills-based hiring has helped our hiring leaders identify strong candidates with a disability by utilizing our externship experiences, the community-based assessments in our stores with clients with disabilities. We're able to put the candidate right in front of that hiring leader, giving them the opportunity to show off their skills and potential. This helps to break down those fears or the worries a hiring leader may have and show them they can fit into the team dynamic of that store. Our company also has invested in workforce innovation and talent centers across the U.S., which are localized training hubs that offers that hands-on experience in a simulated retail environment. These centers are unique to communities that are placed in and provide skill building opportunities for individuals with disabilities along with other underserved populations. This provides a training experience that is free from the typical day-to-day distractions and anxiety-inducing situations we may face in a real store environment.
Yeah, I've had a chance to see that in action, and it's a wonderful program. So CBS to be commended for that. Next is Lisa. How about the Hall of Fame Village?
Sure. We've gone through a process to modify our job descriptions to be more reflective of the actual skill sets needed. For example, not every position needs a college degree or even a high school diploma. We were hiring teens with no diplomas for positions. So why would the job description say that a high school diploma was needed? It was time for us to take a much deeper dive into what the positions really warranted. And through that, we were able to make several modifications to those.
Okay. And you had an example, I think, of somebody that worked, with a disability for Hall of Fame Village. It was a success story. Obviously, without sharing that person's name, can you talk a little bit about that?
We've had a few success stories actually. One individual that worked for us for I think nearly 3 years, and a couple of individuals that are still here. Most recently, one of my favorite stories is we were working with an OOD to host a job fair here on our campus, and we didn't have an open position, but my recruiter called me right away and just said, "Hey, I have a candidate that I really think this hiring manager should meet, but therefore we don't have that position open right now. So can I still schedule them to meet with the hiring manager?" And I said, absolutely. You have to be open to new ways of looking at hiring needs and not be so stringent. And we were able to get an interview for a candidate pretty quickly based on that.
That's fantastic. Um, and again, Lisa, what steps have you taken to ensure your recruitment? I'm sorry, what role have partnerships like those with OD played in helping you recruit and hire qualified candidates with disabilities?
Well, we've, as I mentioned, hired several candidates through OOD. There are a couple that specifically, there's one example that I love to also share that I'm sorry, I'm a storyteller, but these are the examples that are meaningful to me. We have a candidate that came to us that wasn't able to read or write. And we had the supervisor that was very, very willing to work with that individual since they were such a hard worker and they were doing wonderfully. And therefore, this hiring manager helps the individual clock in and out every day because he couldn't read where to clock in and clock out. And the buttons from this outsourced system looked very similar. And he even used some tape and some paper to give him signs rather than words in order to clock in and out. So that's really one of my favorite stories that I have.
It's great. Um, Laura, Dwayne, can you share what steps you've taken to ensure your recruitment or application process is accessible to all your candidates?
Yeah, I think CVS has done a great job in taking steps to ensure the recruitment process is accessible. Specifically within our CVS Workforce Initiatives team, we help prepare clients for the application and the interview process through our virtual application training sessions. This is a 1-hour session that provides insights into how to apply, an overview of our virtual job trial assessment, including review of questions and tips on how to think about responding, the application review process and tips on interviewing. With our community partners, we also assist in doing mock interviews to provide quality feedback for areas of improvement. Just last year, we piloted a neurodiverse hiring experience as well, using a skill-based alterated interview that allows candidates who identify as neurodiverse to demonstrate their unique skills rather than going through a question-based interview. And we piloted this in our data science department through corporate office, and it went over very well. The goal of the program is to have an equitable and accessible hiring experience where recognition and support of neurodivergency is a key component of the hiring process. And then we also have our abilities and abundance program through CBS, which I am an advisor of. And we're able to, both internally and externally educate our national partners of what we have. We are educating our internal stakeholders, our hiring managers, and we're able to develop, different training for those individuals to be prepared to interview individuals with disability.
Great. And Lisa, can you share a little bit about the Hall of Fame Village, some of the steps you guys have taken for the application process, again, to make sure that it's accessible?
Sure. By ensuring that all of our job descriptions are more clear and concise, we attempt to use inclusive language and avoid discriminatory verbiage. We proactively ask candidates about any accommodations that they may require, either whether it's with scheduling, training, etc., so that we can make accommodations on the spot for them. So those are a couple of the things that we do.
I think you mentioned you work with OD with Eric for your online application.
Yes, we had someone come in and do an evaluation of our online application to ensure that it would be more open and visible and inclusive to those that had visual disabilities, which was a thing that I had never even thought of before working with OOD. So they helped to educate us on how we can make changes to those online applications.
Great, thank you. And Lexi, talk a little bit about at Covelli some of the steps that have been taken again with the recruitment or application process to ensure that it's accessible for everyone.
All right, so for our job descriptions, we have tried to make them inclusive and clearly define what's expected of our employees, and also review that during the interview process. For our applications, we primarily get those online, but we have printed paper applications at our cafes for the candidates, or we can accept it through email or make any accommodations at.
Great. And also, Lexi, what role have partnerships, again, like working with OD, played in helping you recruit and hire qualified candidates with disabilities?
So with OOD and similar organizations, we have participated in many hiring events, gotten candidate referrals, and any resources that we need for hiring candidates with disabilities. The hiring events and candidate referrals have helped immensely, as well as the resources and any prompt responses for questions that may come up.
Great. Dwayne, you want to share, how the partnerships have worked for you with groups like OOD?
Yeah, OOD has really helped CPS to connect to qualified candidates through multiple channels. Your hiring events, the spotlight presentations. We have quarterly touch bases to review initiatives, updates, and changes, highlighting CBS to providers across the state on opportunities for employment at CBS and opportunities for our partnerships to train and develop talent in partnerships with our workforce team, and hiring referrals. I think just having that close interaction with our OOD partners throughout the state has really helped us to identify quality candidates.
Great. Okay, so now I just wanted to have everyone kind of share, if an employer is getting started with implementing disability inclusive recruitment strategies, what's one piece of advice that you would like to share with them to begin that journey? We'll start with Dwayne.
I think the first thing I would recommend is, definitely reaching out to OD and partnering with a disability organization to help you understand and help get quality candidates. But I think the other biggest thing too is partner with other businesses who have been successful, such as the Hall of Fame Village here, like, people who have already done this in business and are successful. I know Giant Eagle is very successful in this area, but talking to other businesses, I think, really can help a business to get started with it.
Great advice. Lexi, you want to share, what's one thing that you'd like to offer as advice for someone?
Sure. Pretty similar to CBS, I recommend just starting with reaching out to local organizations such as OOD, but just knowing that you have resources and support available when necessary goes a long way.
Great. And Lisa, how about at the Hall of Fame Village?
I'll echo what Lexi and Dwayne said, but one of the biggest things that we do is we try to simply listen to our candidates. They're typically going to be the ones that tell us what they need if they're having an issue applying for a position or interviewing for a position. Take the phone call, answer the email, and then be willing to make a change. Like I said, being so stringent, I think, is sometimes what gets in our way.
Great advice from all of you. Thank you. As we wrap up our panel discussion, let's open up our chat because we'd love to hear from our audience. Tell us what's one small step an organization can take this month to make their hiring process more inclusive. So if you want to type those ideas into the chat, share with everyone what you're doing. Okay. I see someone says that they're allowing paper applications. We have another person actually listen to the individual's needs. It's kind of echoing what Lisa just said. All great suggestions. Keep them coming. Anybody else? All right. Oh, we have someone that said update job descriptions, the language in the job description to be more inclusive. So these are all great ideas. Thank you for sharing them. These small steps can certainly lead to big changes. We're so grateful to our guest panelists for joining us today and generously sharing their insights and experiences. Thank you. Your contributions have added so much value to this conversation. So Tawnya, let's stop and check the Q&A and take a final few questions before we wrap up.
So our first question is, what is the best way to support disabilities during virtual Teams interviews? So virtual interviews are a common step in the interviewing process and use a variety of virtual formats and platforms. So resources to help an individual successfully navigate virtual interviews can be found on the virtual interviews page of OOD's website. So it's also best practice to include a reasonable accommodation statement in the virtual interview invitation, along with contact information so the person knows how to ask for what they need to participate in the virtual interview.
Okay. Still not seeing any more in the Q&A. Do you have another question, Tawnya, that you can share with us from the pre-submitted?
I do, Ron. So do you have any tips on how to get management to shift and allow for more skills-based hiring? So emphasize to them how skills-based hiring supports the business strategy and aligns with business objectives to fill critical roles and broadens the applicant pool by opening doors to qualified candidates from non-traditional backgrounds, including individual disabilities. So another tip is to demonstrate the effectiveness of skills-based hiring by sharing success stories of employees who were hired based on their skills and not their degrees.
Okay.
I think we do have one.
You've got one? Okay. I'm not seeing it on mine, Tawnya, so if you would go ahead and read that.
Yeah, so another question that we had pre-submitted was, how can our organization reflect a commitment to accessibility and disability inclusion? So start by including terms such as disability inclusion and accessible or accessibility into your mission and value statements and posting that information on the careers webpage. This could be a powerful way to demonstrate a commitment to attracting and hiring qualified candidates with disabilities.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Tawnya. Let's take a moment and reflect on the key points from today's session. We explored skills-based hiring, a strategy that focuses on what candidates can do, not just where they've been. This approach can open doors for more individuals with disabilities. We discussed role-specific recruitment strategies and how tailoring job descriptions and outreach can help attract qualified candidates with disabilities across all levels of your organization. And we shared the importance of supports and partnerships that can help you build a more inclusive hiring process. Inclusive hiring builds a stronger, more innovative workforce, and you don't have to do it alone.